All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us today for our November 22nd, 2023 regular council meeting. I'd like to just call us to order and respectfully acknowledge that the land in which we gather on is the unceded territory of the Comox First Nation, the traditional keepers of this land. I think it's also incumbent to just mention that today is National Housing Day, and I've just actually arrived back from the Provincial Housing Conference, and with that, we will go into late items. I don't believe there are any, and moving on to adoption of minutes, and there's a recommendation. Second. All right, so we're going to move adoption on all of them. Are there any errors or omissions? And seeing no errors or omissions, we will move that those are unanimously adopted, and we'll move into staff reports and start with the 276 Sandwick Road Heritage Protection Update. Mr. Garbett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Wade is going to handle introductions for the reports under the Development Services Group. So I'll turn that over to her.
All right, Ms. Wade.
Great. Thank you very much. Before you today is a report as a result of a motion by council that was requesting that staff return with a report in response to a letter received from a citizen in regards to the protection of 276 Sandwick Road. In the report, it outlines the background on this application. And what it outlines is that, first of all, we do not have an application on this property yet. There has been discussions with the applicants that are looking to do development proposals on this site. It currently is zoned C2A and also is designated in the OCP as a town center. In regards to the question about protection, this property is on the City of Courtenay's Heritage Registry. So it has significance from the point of view that it is on a community heritage register, which is allocated under Part 15 of the Local Government Act, where it is designated as a value to the community. Within that, that means that it is not protected. Protection of properties is a different process and in different sections of the Act. What it means is that it is acknowledged of its value, and what the tools are for the municipality is that it can work with the owner in regards to the elements in the statement of significance, which is also attached to this report, regarding the Edwardian details of this building, which is the significance and also the heritage of the person who built the house. And but it is not able to be protected at this time. In order to do protection, it's a different process. It requires a bylaw. It requires being in a going through a process with a heritage conservation experts to actually determine the various criteria that are set out in various legislative pieces. It would require funding to do that process. Currently, this is not in staff's work program. We do not have a heritage management plan. A heritage management plan would cost $50,000 to $70,000 to do. There is some available funding for that. It is also not in the work program right now for any bylaws or anything for this property. So what staff is recommending is that we work with the applicant as per the management tools that are outlined in the LGA, and work with them in regards to the statement of significance and look at incorporating those design elements into the proposed development when we actually receive the actual application. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have in regards to this.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. And are there any questions from council? Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks to staff for the report. Just to clarify, we've had one letter from a citizen with regards to this. there's actually no organized society that is dedicated to the preservation of this house. I believe it's been in private hands basically since it was built. Do we have any indication from, for example, the Heritage Committee, if they consider it worthy of us going to significant effort to protect?
Through the mayor to Councillor Hillian, in regards to that, there's been 2 meetings with the Heritage Advisory Commission on this in a pre-application mode because the application has not been formalized. The first one was in regards to incorporating the elements that are identified in the statement of significance. And then the second one was about when they saw the design with the elements in it, whether they wish that the building not be removed from the site, or if it was to be moved somewhere else, and that would be a different conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian and Councillor McCollum.
Yeah, thanks. Part of my question was already answered, but I guess I'm just trying to understand like what the implications would be for the development of the site if we implement a statement of significance on the application. Like, are we talking about potentially like preserving a facade, or like is it a full range of options, and are we weighing out like the impact for the site potential versus the value of preserving that piece of heritage? I mean, I can see that a building that is prominently displayed in a public area, like say close to downtown or somewhere where there's a lot of, pedestrian activity, that it's like, becomes something that the community recognizes. But this particular site is pretty tucked away. So I guess there's a couple of questions there, but whether or not that is also kind of weighed in the equation of the value to that heritage piece.
Through the mayor to Councillor McCollum, the questions are really well pointed, because what the issue is with the statement of significance, all it is guidance. So it doesn't allow us as staff to say you must do something. It's about us talking with the applicant and working with them about how they might incorporate those design features into their design. They would have the options to take some of the elements, say the faux stone or some of the ginger gable, and integrate that in, or they could choose not to do that and do it more in a modern way. But we really don't have the ability to say you must do something. It's about working with.
Thanks very much. And Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks very much. I guess I was also going to bring up the fact that our OCP does, I think, highlight that this is an area for densification. And you answered a lot about what that statement of significance would mean, and what some of the options are for developers. I guess it could go even further, taking the building apart and reusing. I don't know if there's any wood in there. I would point out that of course I've seen this building since I came to the Valley. But I've never really heard any stories about it. So I often wonder, it's hard. How do you pinpoint the significance of a building? No one knows anything about it. But anyways, thanks for the report, and it's good to know.
Thanks, Councillor Frisch and Councillor Morin.
Great, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to note near the end of the report, it does talk about, of course, my report's gone now. Let me go back to it. That the Heritage Advisory Committee said in May 2022 that they'd expect that the redevelopment will take historical value of the building into consideration and will ensure the new building will incorporate those elements. So it certainly doesn't say, don't demolish this building for X, Y, and Z reasons. So and that could be because, the Heritage Advisory Committee is also a volunteer body and don't have tons of time and resources to perhaps, research all the heritage sites and buildings in the valley. And but as Councillor Hillian noted, we did have the one letter. And I guess we would have to embark on a whole other process to evaluate whether the building could be moved or anything like that. And then, of course, where would it get moved to? So, yeah, I think, you know, we certainly want to protect significant sites, but I'm not quite sure if there's, if there's enough information here to really assess what that looks like specifically. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Councillor Morin and Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I do want to acknowledge the letter from Brendan Johnson, in which he actually gives a fair amount of information about the house, the history of its ownership, its significance, both in terms of architecture and in relation to the literary world. And so I would certainly hope that staff dialogue with the whoever is developing the site would take that into account, and if it's not a matter of preserving the entire site, that aspects of it could certainly be built into whatever replaces it. Having said that, I'd like to move that council receive the 276 Sandwich Road Heritage Protection Update Report for information, and direct staff to work with the property owner to address the statement of significance in any proposed development application.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded, and I don't see any further things. And Councillor Jolicoeur, you look like you're in. I'll call the vote. Councillor Frisch.
So yeah, just one more thing that slightly touches on this. I'm trying to remember what our bylaws are about demolition, and I know I think through the RD there was some talk about highlighting or encouraging deconstruction over demolition. I wonder if staff have any thoughts on that. If we have any bylaws pertaining to that yet.
Mr. Carmen.
Thank you, through the mayor, to Councillor Frisch. There was definitely discussions at the solid waste level at trying to encourage the reclamation and not the outright demolition of all sorts of buildings. And so we would certainly encourage that. And it's, hopeful. And if there is some opportunity, perhaps if it's not able to be addressed through the application, either the moving of that structure off site. Some people who've been in the valley a long time remember the movement of a very large 3-story white residential building that's beside the former location of the CVRD office on Comox Road. And so everything is possible. I just was in Kingston and they were moving very large brick buildings. So it is possible that, that would be there. And at a staff level, we would certainly do our best to accommodate any, either if it's reclamation or relocation. That's sometimes that can be a little bit challenging. So we look at some ways if we could be of assistance in that regard.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for the question. And I do want to acknowledge that the owner of the property is in attendance today in the gallery, I believe, Manny, right? And so, but I think we've covered all the bases. So with that, I will call the question on the motion on the floor. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. So, all right. Thanks very much. Next, we have the City Hall clock project update. Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll move that council support a standalone option for the City Hall clock at the location of the old City Hall or flagpole location and include interpreted signage, and that staff report back to council on the location recommendation for the standalone option along with costs, and that staff bring the report to the Heritage Advisory Commission to receive comments.
It's been moved and seconded. Would you like to speak to that?
Just to acknowledge, Mayor, appreciation to staff for bringing this forward. I did bring the original motion for a staff report based on the engagement with the Heritage Committee. And I know that for some people, this is a relic of the past, but for others, the heritage, the built heritage of the community since settlement occurred over 150 years ago is worth acknowledging in some ways, and And I also think that clocks in prominent locations serve as meeting gathering points and add to the character of a city. So I'm hopeful that council will support this for the relatively small cost involved. Thank you.
Councillor Jolicoeur.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I'm not necessarily super inclined to support the recommendation as it's shown here. I think we're in a time where there's a lot of real issues that people are facing, whether it be affordability or toxic drugs, homelessness, housing, and without actually having the true costs associated with this. And I see the second part of this motion speaks to staff going back and getting some cost analysis of what it would be totally for the infrastructure upgrades for the clock. I don't really have any comments necessarily on the location. I do find it, given that we're just about to embark in budget season, more responsible for us to consider this at a time when we have the true costs associated with what this might actually look like on City Hall parking lot. And so for that, I guess I'm kind of curious if staff can speak to I believe it's 25,000 that was originally set aside for this. And I believe it says in the staff report that any further design analysis would have to go back. And I'm wondering if staff can speak to a timeline on how long something like that would take to come back to us for a design and a cost associated to that design.
Ms. Wade.
Through the mayor to Councillor Jolicoeur. In regards to the cost, the original budget for this was $25,000. One of the two clocks was refurbished, so the remaining budget is down to $14,862. And then within that, staff are hoping that the budget will support the standalone. And if it doesn't, then we would of course notify council that. It won't take us that long to figure out the cost. It's to do with electrical and the location. So we should have this done, in the new year for sure.
Okay.
January, February.
Yeah, so I guess I'd be looking, and I can't actually see my colleagues in the room, but if there's an appetite for us to just consider this second and that component prior to actually committing to the installation of the location. I know that at the moment, the only actual true cost estimate that we have is for the facade of the building, which staff are not recommending that we go to. So I'm not sure, Mayor, if you can give me a sense of how people are, or if any of my colleagues have any thoughts on just moving that second piece, if there's any interest.
All right, and if I'm interpreting this correctly, it's coming back regardless. So it's coming back. So if it comes back and it's $200,000 or whatever, that it would, I believe, unless I'm misunderstanding, there's going to be a second chance for council to approve the budgeted cost. Does that? And I'm getting nods from Ms. Wade, but I'll let her use her own words.
Thank you, your mayor. Yes, in regards to that, the whole idea is that to support of the location on the old City Hall site or the flag pole, will come back with costs. We'll take what we have to the Heritage Advisory Commission, get their input, and bring it back to council.
And there's other people that want to speak, so I'll let them speak, and that might get you a flavor. Did you have any follow-up questions?
I have another question, so I'll wait.
Okay. Leave your hand up, otherwise I'll probably forget. So appreciate that. Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Just to respond to that suggestion, I'm inclined to support this and move ahead with installing the clock. And I know it's been going on for a while. We were looking at refurbishing 2 clocks, seems like a decade ago, but yeah, I actually had a question about the location of the old City Hall building. Excuse my ignorance, but is that on our current City Hall property? Is
where the parking lot is closest to 6th Street?
Right. Okay. Well, that seems fine. I actually wonder, this is the way I think, if there's an opportunity to get another car charging station out there. If we're dragging electrical power all the way out there, food for thought. Thanks for the report.
Thanks, Councillor Frisch, for that, and for the idea of another car charger that might get some ideas going. But I think I'll go back to Councillor Jolicoeur if you had a follow-up question.
Yeah, it's mostly related to the alternate locations on page 3 of the staff report. And the second bullet there, it gives a few different locations of the standalone options. And I'm wondering if staff have at least an initial impression on which of those would be the lowest costs.
And I'll give it back to Ms. Wade.
Through your mayor, to Councillor Jolicoeur. I don't have a cost of what is less. It would all depend on the electrical location, and I don't have that detail at the moment. That's why we want to do the costing and then bring it back to council. So that's why I don't have a lower or higher number at this point in time.
Just as a follow-up, Mayor, to that.
Yeah.
So as per this recommendation on the screen, there will only be a cost analysis of one of those 3 sub-bullets, one of those 3 locations. So we won't actually be able to know which of those 3 potential options has the lowest cost. We're only going to cost out one. Is that correct?
Through your mayor to Councillor Jolicoeur, we're costing out we're looking at the old City Hall site and the flagpole. We're not recommending putting it on the building because we know there's asbestos and hazmat and structural issues, and that's not a recommendation we're making.
Okay, thank you.
Right. And yeah, so that'll come back. We'll have the 2 options and be able to make a decision at that point. So excellent. Okay. We have a motion on the floor. So all those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. And then we'll get into 2023 disaster risk reduction. And Councillor Frisch.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll move that council approve an application for the 2023 disaster risk reduction climate adaptation fund to be submitted jointly on behalf of the City of Courtenay and Comox First Nation, and that council delegate authority to the city manager on behalf of the City of Courtenay to approve a formal municipal service agreement with Comox First Nation for the provision of emergency planning and disaster reduction measures.
It's been moved in second, and I'll pass it over to our city manager, Mr. Garvin.
Thank you. Through Mayor and Council, Chief McDonald will give a brief overview of this great partnership opportunity and very hopeful on a successful grant application.
Excellent. Chief McDonald.
Thank you through the CEO to Mayor and Council. The purpose of this report is to seek council approval for the regional application for the Disaster Risk Reduction Climate Adaptation Grant in partnership with the Comox First Nation, and to delegate the authority to the city manager on behalf of the City of Courtenay to approve a formal municipal service agreement with the Comox First Nation for the provision of emergency planning and disaster reduction measures. If this application is successful, this grant would provide the City of Courtenay and Comox First Nation with the funding necessary to purchase flood barriers and associated equipment, as well as training on how to set up and maintain these items. A municipal service agreement between the City of Courtenay and Comox First Nation will also provide the governments an opportunity to share knowledge and resources, as well as develop a plan to mitigate damage caused from overland flooding. Very exciting project. There's been a lot of work between representatives from both governments, and we're very excited to answer any questions you may have about this application.
Excellent. Thanks very much. And Councillor Jolicoeur.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and really happy to see this report. It's I think a really good news story in so many ways around the ways in which we can partner to address climate change and to make our whole community more resilient while supporting building capacity with our partner in Comox First Nation. In the staff report on page 2, it speaks to some of the specifics around the components that the City of Courtenay will receive out of this funding. And then it speaks in more broader terms to some of the components that Comox First Nation will receive. I'm wondering if there's any specifics. Specifically, I'm wondering about those flood barriers and equipment to protect their infrastructure. And we've got some hard numbers for the city of Courtenay. I'm wondering if we got some numbers for KFN. Thanks.
Thank you for the question. That's through the mayor to Councillor Jolicoeur. The approximate length of flood barrier that Comox First Nation would be receiving would be about 2,000 feet. The order also would include the strapping mechanisms to anchor the barriers in place, pumps to fill them, a storage trailer for them to be able to keep the equipment in a dry location when it's not in use, and a bunch of other stuff that would be utilized for the setup of the barriers.
Excellent. I think that answered his question. And I don't see any further questions. So with that, we have the motion on the floor. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that's unanimous. Next, we have a letter from Minister of Housing, new legislation to support local government housing initiatives. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any comments regarding the letter at all? Seeing none. Councillor Jolicoeur.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll just say the mayor and myself have been at Housing Central all week, so this is kind of top of mind for me. I'm just wondering if staff can speak to some initial responses that the city of Courtenay is taking to consider how this might impact our developer community and our citizens more broadly.
Mr. Carpet.
Thank you. Through the mayor, I really appreciate the question, Councillor Jolicoeur. We're going to be meeting as staff. The impact of this legislation is sort of unprecedented. It's basically making fundamental changes to the regulation of land use across the province. It's also a combination of entitlements that we've never sort of seen as prescribed at the provincial level. There's fundamental changes being made to the amenity and development approval steps. There's fundamental changes to the public engagement, or basically the direct public input related to individual development applications. So it is really, really, really impactful. And the timeline of July of 2024 is also quite daunting in terms of coming up with regulations. What I can say is that your staff team is up to the challenge. We're also talking regionally, small R regionally, between all of the local governments. We're already working together on the a combination of the affordable housing initiatives at the federal, the Housing Accelerator Fund, as well as all of the jurisdictions are working on development approvals and looking at some ways to work together, including updating all of our housing needs assessments. So there's a great deal of work in front of us. Our senior team is actually going to be talking just before Christmas about some of these things and what it does. And we'll no doubt be talking to council about what the 2024 work program looks like, both through our budget deliberations as well as our strategic planning initiatives. So I think I covered quite a few things there.
Yeah,
exciting times.
Yeah, and I've had the pleasure not just of attending the conference there with you, Councillor Jolicoeur, but with spending some time with staff in the technical briefings, and the questions I brought forward really go into that capacity and whether or not the province will be actually supporting municipalities financially to help make this happen. Previously, it's been done through grants, and so peekaboo grants, you might get it, you might not. But you're really taking staff away from doing the work that they do to write a grant to maybe or maybe not get paid for it. So at those technical briefings, I've given a big push to make sure that that funding is just given to communities without having to fight each other for it. And then serendipitously, when I was talking to the Minister of Finance last night, I reiterated that quite strongly as well, is that municipalities really need to have some financial supports to make this happen, especially smaller municipalities that just don't have the capacity that a Vancouver or Victoria might have. So yeah. With that, Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Maris. This is interesting in one sense. It feels like the province is catching up to the city of Courtenay because we were pushing for a lot of these changes, but they've also leapfrogged right over top of us and gone way further forward. Obviously, talking about no parking requirements and on and on. Now it says here it was introduced. I'm wondering, do we have any idea of when it will be coming up for like adoption or what their timeline is? What's their timeline?
Yeah, through the mayor to Councillor Fish. Yes, my understanding is they're looking at Royal Assent next month, December. So we have a lot of deadlines, as the city manager was talking, to have in place before, in some cases, May 30th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for that.
And you know, and that's one of the things that I've articulated is that we just, you know, passed our new OCP a year ago. We're in the middle of implementation and we were doing things that, you know, maybe some municipalities weren't, but now we basically either have to go back to the drawing board, sometimes change the way in which we're doing things. So it's going to cost us time and money, which is just frustrating. So hopefully they'll, you know, come forward with a package for municipalities to help support us financially.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully we can find a way to, you know, make good use of this new bill. It also does speak to the province stepping up to make good on a housing shortage, which has obviously been coming for a long time. So that's a positive thing. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Councillor Frisch. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, it is just for receipt, so we'll just pass that unanimously. And then we have a thank you from the city of West Kelowna from McDougall Creek, or regarding the McDougall Creek wildfire. Okay, it's been moved and seconded, and Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. Hesitant as I am to prolong the meeting. I do think it's appropriate to read this letter, and I wonder if
I will give you the lenience to do that for sure. I was going to do a very similar thing, so happy
thanks.
to
This is a letter from Gordon Milsom, the mayor of West Kelowna, and it says, "Dear Mayor Wells, thank you from West Kelowna. With the most immediate McDougall Creek wildfire recovery efforts almost over, I'd like to express my deepest gratitude to you and the Courtenay Fire Department for all your incredible support during the wildfire. This was by far the most unprecedented and devastating wildfire in the history of West Kelowna. We cannot thank you enough for sending such outstanding firefighters who put their lives on the line each and every day to help our community. How could we ever truly repay your fire chiefs and the army of amazing men and women who helped us continues to go through my mind. There simply are no words of thanks that run deep enough to show our gratitude. But please know that we're here for you should a wildfire crisis happen in your community. There's no doubt that these are unprecedented times and we're stronger together. This traumatic time for so many who lost their homes includes firefighters who also lost their home. We are devastated for their loss and in awe of their resilience during such a stressful time. Our hearts go out to them and their family as they also recover from these unprecedented wildfires. I'm also grateful for all the calls, emails, and messages of support along the way. Our entire fire rescue staff send along their deep gratitude as well. The next generation of firefighters who learn from examples surely benefit from your outstanding personnel who demonstrated leadership, partnership, and firefighting excellence in our community. On behalf of our council and the entire West Kelowna community, we are so deeply thankful for your support during a remarkably difficult time for so many. Kind regards, Gordon Milsom, Mayor. And just a tip of the hat to our fire chief and his staff for this acknowledgement. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian. And yeah, as soon as I received it, I did make sure that a copy got to our fire chief. But I think it's definitely worth reiterating that, you know, from the bottom of council's heart, we really appreciate all the work and effort and really, you know, running towards fires when others are trying to get away. And not just this letter, but I'm sure many of us had friends and family updating us on, you know, having to be evacuated or even losing their homes. So it's something that certainly touched the entire province. And you're done, Councillor? Oh. Thank you, Councillor Hillian. Really appreciate that. Councillor Jolicoeur.
Thanks, Mayor. And just echoing my colleagues, words as well. We had UBCM a few weeks ago, well, September now, and seeing a few of the Okanagan mayors and councillors who also shared their thanks to us. I'm wondering if it would be okay if Chief McDonald could share a little bit around how our fire department supported the wildfires this summer and any of the activities that we participated in.
Well, he's put his microphone on, so Chief McDonald.
Thank you for the question through the mayor to Councillor Jolicoeur. Our crews that went out assisted with numerous activities. Primarily, they were responsible for going into neighborhoods that were in the path of the fire and performing fire smart duties. So they would be moving combustibles away from the homes. They would be doing assessments to see, which ones had a chance of, surviving an incident, or the other ones that might not because the scope of work was too much. They were staying in a fire camp basically. So, sleeping in tents and on the cots and things, working the long hours. They were taking care of spot fires. I think they also assisted with the backburning operation that the BC Wildfire Service was doing to try to get rid of some unburned fuel. There was lots of shuttling of equipment from point A to point B, lots of dusty roads, lots of smoke breathed in, but that's pretty much just a snapshot of the duties that they performed. We also had one of our deputy chiefs, Deputy Chief Siegler. He actually went and worked in the incident command post in I believe it was the West Kelowna area. So he had a different experience. He wasn't on the front lines actively fighting the fires, but he definitely was helping with the logistics and making sure that the firefighters were receiving the resources that they needed to do their jobs.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks so much for that update. And any further questions or comments? Seeing none. Again, just a deep gratitude. Thank you so much. And that's unanimously received just as a letter. And we'll move on to management reports. And I'm not sure if anybody had any questions on any of the management reports. Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll move the council receive the engineering services, corporate services, recreation, culture and community services, and city manager management reports.
It's been moved and seconded, and I don't see any questions or comments. So with that, actually I do. Mr. Garvin.
Yeah, thank you. Through Mayor and Council, Councillor Jolicoeur asked me a question. There was a typo in the city manager report as it relates to KFN service agreement. So we're in an interim agreement for 2023. There was just a missing bit of the English language there.
Excellent. Thanks so much. And Councillor Moore.
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to point out that one of the projects, the Dingwall Steps, is at 85% completion, and I've heard a lot of positivity about that project in the community. So kudos to everybody who's worked on that project, and we'll have another way to climb the hill pretty quickly here. Thanks. On time and under budget, right? We'll emphasize that.
Thank you, Councillor Moore, for that. And Councillor Jolicoeur.
Thanks. Two questions in the engineering report. One was on the Puntledge Sewer Comox Road crossing, the contaminated soils in the area. Is that something that is that a cost that we are covering? And if not, if we can maybe just speak to that. And the other question I had was under the East Courtenay Fire Hall. Really happy to see 25%. We're on our way. And it says contract awarded. Is the just for clarification, is the contract that's been awarded for the options analysis or for the any further parts of the project, or simply at the options stage? Thanks.
Right. Mr. Davidson.
Yes, thank you very much for the questions through the CEO to Mayor and Council. So going back to the first question, Puntledge Sewer, contaminated soils, yes, those are costs that we would bear if indeed we do need to bear them. So the costs we've included in the borrowing report at the end of the agenda are more of a contingency at this point. We are still working to not have to bear those costs if we don't have to, looking at various options to avoid them. But if we do have to pay them, then that will be the city paying those costs. Going to your second question, East Courtenay Fire Hall. We're very excited to be 25% as well. Thank you. I would point out it's the options analysis only, so we're not quite that far along. Contract awarded is for options analysis with our architect, and we are working closely with them to develop some options. Thank you.
All right, thanks so much for that. And Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. I didn't understand under, I believe it was corporate services has the Vancouver Island Library, just says lease, and I don't remember what's going on with that, if it's just renewal of a lease or if it's something significant or more interesting.
All right.
Sorry.
Building anticipation for a really good answer.
It's gonna be like, it's just a lease.
Yeah, who's in charge of music? Miss O'Connell.
That is correct. It's for lease renewal.
Thanks for coming up with that.
All right. Thanks, Councillor Frisch. Appreciate that. And Councillor McCollum.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I had a question regarding the Ryan Road from Sandwick to Back Road sidewalk / bike lane. I'm not sure, I didn't go back and look at the last management report to see if the update and comments had changed, but it seems to me that perhaps we've maybe hit a hitch there with our discussion with Modi. I'm just wondering if there's an update on that since the last time that we discussed this, and if the timelines for that project are in transition.
Mr. Davison.
Excellent. Thank you very much for the question through the CA to Mayor and Council. Yes, we did have a bit of delay on that project, unfortunately. So we did have some further back and forth with Ministry of Transportation. It was generally productive. We were quite happy about that. And so now we've proceeded into procurement for our consultant contract and then awarding that. So we've just kicked that off recently. So it is progressing, not as quickly as we'd like though, unfortunately.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I also see that our design is complete for our 6th Street Bridge project, and just confirming that we expect the grant results to arrive sometime before Q2, so we would get to see the design and hear those results in the same timeline.
Yes, thank you again for the question. Absolutely. So design is complete. Not any major significant changes since we've last been to council with it. We are expecting grant results hopefully soon. We're still very hopeful on that. And then yes, we will bring it all back to council for final review, of course. Yeah.
Great, thanks.
Yep, Mr. Garvin.
Thank you. Through the Mayor and Council generally, I had a meeting with and Ms. O'Connell joined me with KFN's new senior administrative duo. We want to also make sure, given the timelines of these projects, we both had a governmental and staff change with Comox First Nation, and we had worked closely and discussed that project with Comox First Nation, but we will refresh with that. There has been some infrastructure projects occurring in the Comox Valley that stretched over time. One recently that required, there should have been a check-in, potentially not, there were check-ins, but making sure there's strong communications prior to those works being initiated, apologies, is really important. And so we'll continue to have that open communication.
Thanks very much. And Councillor Moore.
Thanks, Mayor. Just a general comment about all of these reports, just to not gloss over them and just to check off and vote on them, because they all represent heaps and heaps of work by our staff. When you go through them, you can see the things that are part of our strategic priorities, and then you see the things that we slip in as response to important things that arise in the community. And just the wrecking cultural and community services, as there's such diversity in that work plan in terms of all the responsibilities, and corporate services and engineering as well. Just so many different tasks, and it's great to receive these reports from our perspective, I think, because it does obviously demonstrate where projects are at, and that staff is really responding to the strategic direction, which of course comes out of a lot of it, or most of it comes out of what the community is asking for. So just wanted to really recognize staff in that regard, and thought it would be great just to add to another department's workload that's not on here. Maybe the possibility of some communications highlighting some of these things. I know that we do that periodically, but maybe around the time of these management reports coming out, maybe, you know, taking 2 or 3 things from each department and just doing some, a little bit of communication or social media around it. Because we often hear all the things that don't get done and the complicated stuff that we're dealing with, but it would be really great to celebrate some of these successes. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Councillor Morin, and I think, you know, I really do appreciate your comments for a variety of reasons, but I think it's also worth mentioning that it took a while to get these reports to a point where they are really effective and really useful for us on council to do exactly what you're saying. It basically a metric to see how things are happening. You get these zingers thrown at you that you weren't expecting, and how that impacts the workflow. And it's great to be able to see the amazing work that the staff have done, and just the way that it's even laid out. Just it's yeah, I can't say it's enough about how much it helps me understand where we are, and to your point, Councillor Morin, we also have that opportunity. I know we have staff, but we have our own social media to be able to amplify the great work that our staff are doing. So I'll certainly take a bit of what you said and help hopefully do a little bit on my own to say thanks to staff. So yeah, I can. All right. Oh yeah, there was an empty podium there for a while. Fantastic. All right. That being said, amendment report, all those in favor of receipt, and that's unanimous. And we'll move on to the Parks and Rec Advisory Commission. The minutes. Okay, they've been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? Seeing Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, there are two items that came to my attention in this. One is there's a question in relation to potential recognition of an individual, and I was under the impression that we didn't actually publicly name individuals in documents if that consideration was underway, but just a question about that. My other question was there's a comment in the list at the I can't remember where exactly it is, but it was along the lines of does council still value, oh yeah, it's on the bullet list under new business. And it seems like a bit of an existential discussion among the Parks Advisory people. Question as to whether City Council values our input. I'm just curious how our staff representative answered that.
All right, Mr. Garbett.
I won't speak to the staff that were there. I just wanted to remind council that we're working on a report about our committees, and we'll come back, and maybe the question about that posed the existential question will have some discussion for council, and I would leave it at that.
All right. Oh, Ms. Saunders.
Thank you. Through the mayor to Councillor Hillian. In regards to your first question, I think it's general practice for council, if they're considering recognition of an individual, to not make that public until a decision's been made. But this was a discussion at the Parks and Rec Advisory Commission. So it's noted in their minutes. There's no specific request or recommendation from the Parks and Rec Advisory Commission. There was just discussion at that time. In regards to valuing council's council valuing the Parks and Rec Advisory Commission, that really came up through a discussion of the role of the committee. So as part of the future, the work that's coming back to council regarding committees and commissions of council, we raised the discussion at the Parks and Rec Advisory Commission. There'll be further notes in our next meeting, and we'll bring that input to the discussion with council about the future structure of the Parks and Rec Advisory Commission.
Thanks very much for that. And I hope you will pass on to the commission that regardless of the fact that we're looking at some actual terms of reference for committees, that once you're on them, you sort of stay on for the rest of your life. That in no way reflects our lack of appreciation for the volunteer efforts of the good people who come out. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian. And so we have the motion and it's just for minutes. So unless somebody has any errors, we'll make those accepted unanimously. In council resolutions, activating the downtown Duncan Avenue pilot project. Councillor Jolicoeur.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move the motion on the screen. I'm just going to read it out. Whereas downtown Courtenay serves as a commercial, cultural, social, artistic, and culinary hub of the Comox Valley. Whereas the Downtown Playbook 2016 seeks to support the revitalization of downtown by supporting the creation of spaces and amenities for people to enjoy. And whereas the playbook prioritized Create the Heart, Duncan Commons Muse, where special events can occur and people can gather, anchoring downtown for social and cultural events. And whereas the Downtown Courtenay Business Improvement Association, the Arts Council, the Art Gallery, Farmers Market, Chamber of Commerce have been working towards supporting the temporary summer closure of the Duncan Avenue from 5th to 6th Street. And be it resolved that council directs staff bring forward a report on the Duncan Avenue Summer Pilot Project outlining considerations and financial implications for implementation in 2024. And further be it resolved that council directs staff to collaborate with the Duncan Avenue Working Group to review options for the design, implementation, and evaluation of the pilot and include in the report back to council.
All right, it's been seconded. Do you want to speak to your motion? I mean, it encapsulated pretty much everything in there, but do you have any extra comments?
Yeah, I would just say it's, you know, it's a really generative, something that I'm really excited about. You know, the groups are listed here. These are some of our really key partners in our community, both representative of businesses and the art and cultural sector, and of course our food security sector as well with the farmers market. I really am happy to see the collaboration that's happened around that table to ideate what those programming ideas can be. We heard from the delegation at our last council around some of the thinking that's gone into some of the technical aspects that they need. I think this is really just taking one aspect of the downtown playbook and really just trying to activate it and building on some of the great momentum. We had Moonlight and Magic last week and a successful market day this past summer. And so really trying to build on that to really foster more people coming downtown, shopping and recreating and enjoying the amenities that our downtown has to offer and art and cultural experience as well. So I'm looking forward to council supporting this motion and for us to have a conversation with staff around how we can support this for next summer. Thanks.
Thanks so much. Councillor Moore.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'm generally supportive of this, but I do have a question for staff in a moment. You know, anyone who is downtown on the weekend at the Moonlight and Magic sees the potential for this kind of collaborative project. Certainly all the players that are mentioned in this resolution, downtown business, Comox Valley Arts, et cetera, are they're action-oriented organizations that, and I think in the presentation last meeting, they really demonstrated the expertise that they have amongst that group in terms of really working together with the city on this, and that we wouldn't have to reinvent the wheel, or there would be a lot of help. Having said all that, I just wanted to ask staff, again, this is one of those things that I think we have in our plan, but not it wasn't a short-term, it wasn't in the short-term work plan. So I just wanted to ask if staff thinks that this is a reasonable ask doing this report. Thanks.
All right, Mr. Garbutt.
Thank you. Through the mayor to council, I appreciate the question. That's why we're going to get a staff report and understand this. Certain aspects of this are quite straightforward, but other aspects are involved, including the infrastructure required to do this. It's not just as simple as slapping up some benches, et cetera. The ask is very specific, and the the positive implication is very important. So we appreciate the opportunity to provide a report, and we'll be straightforward with council. I had just talked previously about the implication of these legislative changes, and we're going to need to make sure we have our priorities in order. But we always jump to the pump where we can, and we'll find out. The opportunity through a staff report could also look at, what can be undertaken to do this. As an example, the improvements beside the museum were actually helped through iced-tea. So, there's lots of options out there, but thank you for the question and acknowledgement of the demands that we have under our current work program.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I would say this would fit quite nicely with an iced tea grant. So, but I understand there's a lot of work to be done. And thanks again, Councillor Jolicoeur. I don't see any further questions or comments. So all those in favor, and that's unanimous. And we'll move into first, second, and third readings. First, we have the Puntledge Sanitary Catchment Replacement Budget Amendment and Loan Authorization. Councillor Frisch.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll move that council increase the Puntledge Sanitary Catchment Replacement Project budget by $4 million funded from. Pardon me?
To 4 million, yeah. I was like, what?
To $4 million funded from
Thanks, Councillor Moore.
$3.5 million in debt and $500,000 from the sewer asset management reserves. I'll just do the one.
Sure. Yeah, we can have a discussion on that. That's been moved and seconded. So that's to increase the budget to $4 million. Funded by debt and $500,000 from the reserves. Are there any questions or comments around this? Yeah. Hey. Look at that. There's Adam. So geez, said his name and Mr. Legemeyer, did you want to speak to increasing the project budget to $4 million?
Hello, Mayor and Council. I couldn't hear what was going on in the council chambers there, but I suspect Jeff was sort of looking to say something. All right, excellent. Nice to be here, tuning in from TV land. So the Puntledge Sanitary Catchment Placement Project costs have risen substantially and require a budget amendment to proceed. Original estimation was sitting at $2.5 million, but have risen to 3.4. So in conjunction with the increased project costs, the borrowing to fund the project must also be increased. Finally, due to the funding and timing of this project, the borrowing process should or must be commenced promptly to ensure adequate funds on hand to pay for the project. So you'll notice that the total proposed budget is $4 million, of which $3.5 million is coming from debt, $500,000 from reserves. You may also notice that the proposed budget exceeds the expected cost of that $3.4 million. The reason for this is to ensure that the city has the ability to borrow adequate funds if we continue to see cost escalation. The reason for this is the city does not have adequate sewer reserves on hand to absorb cost escalations, and therefore we must rely on debt to cover these cost escalations if they occur. That being said, if the project comes in at the expected price, the city does not have to borrow all the funds authorized. Typically, the loan authorization bylaw requires electorate approval, but due to the city's relatively low debt levels, we are able to use the approval-free liability zone granted by the municipal liabilities regulation. This is made up of, we're within 5% of our annual calculation of our ability to debt service. In the hopefully unlikely event that we use all of the possibly authorized $3.5 million in borrowing, it is expected to increase our annual debt servicing costs to about $1.9 million. This is assuming a $3.5 million loan at the current interest rates of 4.49% over a 30-year period, which gives us about a $229,000 principal and interest payment combined per year. I do want to bring your attention to table 3 of the report, where it shows comparable communities and their debt capacity utilization. So the amount of annual funds that are going to pay for the annual loans. If Courtenay uses the full $3.5 million, we'll increase our utilization of our debt capacity to 13.4%. You know, it moves us to 78th position out of 153 municipalities. So we're in a reasonably fair space. This loan proposal is not putting the Courtenay into any risk of being high on the debt side. And with that, I'm open to further questions.
All right, thanks. Thanks very much. And I don't see any lights just yet, but maybe I'll just ask when we're looking at that table 3, since you brought it to our attention, is that the municipalities that are closest to us, or is that just a random sort of spread from low to high debt servicing?
That is a mix of neighboring municipalities and municipalities of similar size.
Okay, so not necessarily from the bottom or the top, just kind of. Okay,
that is correct.
All right, thanks for clarifying that. I still don't see any questions or comments, so I'll just call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. And we're on to recommendation 2. Councillor Frisch.
Move that council give first, second, and third readings to Puntledge Sanitary Catchment Replacement Loan Authorization Bylaw number 3067/2024.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. We've already had a conversation around it. All those in favor? And any opposed? That's unanimous again. And recommendation 3.
I'll move that council proceed with adoption of Puntledge Sanitary Catchment Replacement Loan Authorization Bylaw number 3067/2024 through the approval-free liability zone granted by the Municipal Liabilities Regulation Section 7.
It's been seconded. And Councillor Jolicoeur.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I guess a question for maybe our city manager or our ledge staff. I think this might be the first time that I've seen a first, second, third, and adoption in one go. And so I'm wondering if staff can just speak to that. Thanks.
Absolutely. Ms. Proton.
So what we're actually doing with recommendation 3 is just saying that we intend to proceed with adoption. It's not adoption tonight. We are required to have a clear day between third reading and adoption. So you'll see this back on the agenda at the December 6th meeting for adoption.
But it's like a promise ring or something?
Does that make sense? When we say we're proceeding with it, it means that we will do it, but we're not doing it right now.
Yeah, so it's the word proceed. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor Jolicoeur. Appreciate that clarity. And with that, all those in favor? And that's unanimous. All right, let's move into Development Procedures Bylaw, Bylaw 3106, and Councillor Moore.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll move that council give first, second, and third readings to Development Procedures Bylaw number 3106. And I just wanted to say that, oh, sorry. No, that's okay. I'm good.
You want to speak to it?
No, that's okay. Thanks.
Okay. All right, it's been moved and seconded. Councillor Jolicoeur, is your hand still up or is this a new question?
It's a new question.
Okay.
Thanks, Mayor. Really happy to see this come through. It's interesting that it's coming when there's so much change coming, which we saw in the letter from the minister. I'm wondering if staff can speak to specifically, I'm curious around the minor development variances. In the staff report, it spoke to a comparative analysis of other municipality of a range of 10 to 50%. And I'm just wondering if staff can speak to how we landed on the 25%.
Ms. Wade.
Through the mayor to Councillor Jolicoeur. Yes. What staff has looked at is that we look at what type of variances have come before council and the frequency of them. And then we looked at what is that percentage variance. And that's where we landed at 25%. And this will greatly reduce the number of variances coming before council and will also streamline the process. And with the delegation of a minor variance, it does not require public notification as well. So it reduces that as well. There are similar communities that have also adopted the 25%, so we're not the only one.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm excited to see a process that can support streamlining variances for our community members. Thank you.
So thanks, Councillor Jolicoeur, and thanks, Ms. Wade, for that clarification. And yeah, I think that really it's about trying to get things done as quickly as possible without necessarily breaking the system, as it were. So yeah, I think it's a really good number. All right, seeing no further questions or comments, all those in favor? And that's unanimous. And we'll move on to the Fee and Charges Amendment Bylaw 3107. Councillor Frisch.
Move that council give first, second, and third readings to Fees and Charges Amendment Bylaw number 3107.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments, or did staff want to speak to it at all? Ms. Wade.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm quite pleased to bring this before you because a lot of these fees haven't been altered since 2010. And we were also missing a lot of fees that staff was doing work for. And now this aligns also with our development procedures bylaw and the processes that we are following. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have in regards to these fees and charges. And we did a fair amount of research with other municipalities and comparisons and understand where we were in relation to surrounding communities of similar size as well.
Okay, and so in that comparison, so it's not necessarily that this is full cost recovery or that, it's really to make sure that we're in line with other municipalities as well.
Yes, through the mayor to council. It's important to note that we're doing cost recovery as much as we can because we have to justify what we're doing with staff time, etc. So it's a reflection of staff input as well as looking comparatively with other organizations to do comparison analysis as well.
Excellent. Thanks for that clarification, and we'll move to Councillor McCullough.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I don't have a question. I just wanted to appreciate staff for the report. There's a lot of work has been done here, and there's a lot of additional changes and charges that we're now looking at, collecting fees for work that the city is providing that we weren't currently receiving compensation for. So also just wanted to recognize that the comparison table was really helpful information for background, especially because some of it is new fees that we haven't seen before. So just wanted to say thank you.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Councillor McCollum. And Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I just want to ask about the public engagement aspect. It indicates that development industry consultation took place in July of 2023. I'm not aware of what our engagement with the development community is right now, so just wondering if you could speak to that in a little bit of detail, please.
All right, Ms. Wade.
Yes, through the mayor to Councillor Hillian. Yes, we did a meeting with the development industry in July and updating them in regards to the processes. We talked about the processes that are in this bylaw as far as minor developments and how we're going to go about doing engagement and those sorts of processes. So we discussed that with the industry. The industry, of course, is happy about having things increase in timelines and process. And then we actually are due to go back to the industry with a number of processes that we're working on as well. So we should have been back a month ago, but we didn't quite get there, but we will get there.
Thanks. And just as a follow-up, when we were doing the official community plan, we did have a fairly useful engagement session with members of the development community that council and staff were also involved in. And I don't know that developers want to spend a lot of time with us political types, but I'm just wondering if there is any plans to go further along that route. At the time, it was indicated that it was useful and would be worth doing again.
Through the mayor to Councillor Helen. Yes, I'm aware of that. And one of the things we've been working on is working directly with the development industry and working through the issues. We can definitely look at going with the development industry and asking if, you know, somebody would like to, you know, if council wants to attend or we do more of an open house, we can definitely look at something like that in the future.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian and Councillor Moore.
Great, thanks, Mayor. Obviously there's some new fees in here, as Councillor McCollum said, that we weren't collecting before, and we don't want our staff to be doing work that we're not getting compensation for. I would think that on the previous item around the changes with delegation of authority and certain things not having to come to council and all that would probably help offset some of those fees, because time is money. So if developers don't need to come for things that they maybe needed to wait for a council meeting for and those kinds of things. Are you able to speak to that at all?
Through the mayor to Councillor Moore, I think if I got the question correctly, the issue is that with the procedures that we are following, it will expedite, like in our procedures bylaw. And then there was certain fees that we weren't even collecting for historically that we should be collecting for. And then there's also just the acknowledgement that there's certain things that we will no longer have to pay for, like advertisement for minor development variance permits. So I think it all kind of balances out.
Right. Yeah, that's sort of my point. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Councillor Moore. So that being said, Councillor Zolliker.
Thanks, Mayor. This was a really interesting report to read, and just wanting to echo Councillor McCollum's feedback on the detail in this report and the appendixes. And just to add to Councillor Morin's question, I think one of the things that I think for those who are doing business with the city from a development perspective is the expansion of the refund policy to be expanded to all development application. So I think that's also another way that we are thinking about the costs associated to moving an application forward and supporting people who might withdraw their application. I guess I had a few questions pertaining to this fee schedule, the comparison table, as it relates to the staff report. And the staff report on page 2, the second bullet speaks to the creation of a flat tree cutting permit fee for larger properties to provide clarity. I'm wondering if staff can speak to, does that mean if there's 100 trees on a property or two trees on a property, the permit fee is the same?
Through the mayor to Councillor Joliker, what this is in the existing fees and charges bylaw, there was an area calculation for a tree cutting permit, which was quite convoluted and hard to apply. And so what this does is simplify, and there's 2 flat rates for it. And then on top of that, anything to do with an arborist study or the tree cutting bylaw itself, there's other requirements for certain fees. So there's 2 separate things. This is just for the application.
So there's an additional, just as a follow-up, Mayor, there's an additional cost per tree based off the tree bylaw?
Correct.
Okay, thanks. My other question was in regards to the liquor license, which is on page 4 of the comparison table, the liquor license applications. I'm wondering, given the phase 2 of the Comox Valley substance use strategy, which speaks to municipal policies as a way to support a healthy community, I'm wondering if there was any referral process or consultation with the Substance Use Strategy Collaborative around the impacts of liquor license applications on supporting our healthy community and regulating the amount of liquor licenses that we have in the community.
Mr. Garvin?
Thank you. Through the mayor to Councillor Joliker. There was considerable amount of discussion related to a previous liquor license application that we heard for one of the brew pubs, and you will be giving consideration to another liquor license application at a subsequent meeting. There was no engagement with respect to this fee component to the studies or providers inside the community. That would come through separate direction by council. This is fees related to an application itself, but council has been very clear about the importance of the substance abuse strategy, the work in the community, and it was raised during the consideration for the Ace Brewing liquor license application. So we will certainly factor into account those policy documents as we look at liquor licenses themselves.
Yeah, thanks for that. And just as a follow-up, I think we have this like really unique expertise of partners across the community who've really added to this substance use collaborative. And I think that part of the phase 2 speaks to the policies at municipalities. And I see this as kind of being one of them. So I look forward to hearing how we can engage with that group to hear ways in which we can support it. I'm not sure. I do have another question on the fees, but I'm happy to pass on, Mayor, if there's others that have their.
There's no other lights at this point, so you have the floor.
Yeah, I guess the last piece here, same document, the comparison table is the telecommunication towers. So a few questions on that. I guess if staff can speak to the types of applicants that would be applying for a permit for telecommunications towers. And my understanding is that this is one of those new ones, which I'm really happy to see. I'm wondering if staff can speak to the specifics around their comparative analysis for this. We have here 1,500. I'm wondering where that sits relative to other communities. Thanks.
All right, Ms. Wade.
Through the mayor to Councillor Jolicoeur. Yes, telecommunications. Yeah, we do not even have a policy yet on telecommunications, which will be coming forward to council. And in regards to the telecommunication industry, it is monitored and regulated through the federal government. And they have their regulations that they have to follow in regards to engagement, etc. And part of it is working with municipalities to have concurrence with zoning and land uses. And with that, the type of applicants that come forward are the carriers themselves. So TELUS, Shaw, Bell, all those. Then they usually work with consultants that work for them to help secure these approvals with municipalities and follow the process that's indicated by Industry Canada in the regulations. And so those applications come forward to us. They do their own notification period. And then if there's a variance or something with the tower, because we have a height restriction on exemptions for towers in our zoning bylaw, then they would have to do a development variance permit and pay those fees to do that. And you will be getting one of those shortly. And then in regards to the comparison, it ranges. So for example, the Crown, for any applications on their property, the charge is $1,000. In the regional district of Nanaimo, it's $4,000. And I want to say Abbotsford, it's either $1,000 or $2,000, depending on engagement requirements. And then there's another one, it's 3,500. So we went with 1,500 to start, just because it was in the range and the size of our municipality. And so that's where we're at with it. So it was our recommendation.
Yeah, thanks for that. And just as a follow-up, I'm looking forward to seeing the work that staff does on the policy. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Jolicoeur. I don't see any further questions or comments. We do have the motion on the floor. All those in favor? And that passes unanimously. And we'll move on to the Solid Waste Management Bylaw 3113. And staff are going to speak to it. Oh, so start with Mr. Shaw.
Yes, thank you through the mayor to council. Staff are pleased to be here to present the Solid Waste Management Bylaw. Pleased to introduce Mr. Thompson, the manager of Solid Waste Services within the Public Services Division. You'll see here before you today, there's a number of items to go through. One is the staff report, and Chris will walk us through the staff report, as well as the new Solid Waste Management Bylaw that's being proposed here today. There's some municipal ticket information that is associated with this bylaw. There's also a request for retraction or council direction to perform retraction of the refuge materials and collection removal bylaw, which you can see is just over 20 years old now. So in place of that, staff have developed a brand new bylaw that supports the full automated service that's about to come forth, as well as a policy for contamination control within the Recycle BC obligation. So we had to seek approval through Recycle BC, and part of that approval to transition from manual collection to automated was the adoption and the introduction of a policy that supports the contamination reduction strategy. So you'll see that here as well. I just want to point out this was interdepartmental or cross-jurisdictional, I should say. The town of Comox has partnered with the city of Courtenay through this venture. We've done a great deal of work hand in hand with them, and you'll see most of our communications to date have been joint communications, and as well as we've shared information relative to the implementation of the new service and as well bylaw development. So there's a lot of work that's gone into it, and we're really happy to be here today. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw, and through the mayor to council, I'll be presenting the solid waste management bylaw. In June 2022, council directed staff to award a 10-year contract commencing January 1st, 2024 to Halton Recycling Limited, operating as Mterra, for automated curbside collection. And it created a new solid waste service, which requires an accompanying bylaw to outline the program's expectations and define the requirements of the automated curbside collection service. As mentioned, the town of Comox entered into a similar agreement with Mterra, and both the city and town will be transitioning to automated curbside collection in 2024. So we'll be seeking council approval of first, second, and third readings today of the new solid waste management bylaw. The highlights of the bylaw I'll be presenting here quickly. Furthermore, an update will be required to the municipal ticketing information bylaw to define penalties and offenses related to the new bylaw, as well as to remove penalties for offenses related to the old bylaw. Upon commencement of automated curbside collection, the existing refuse materials collection, removal, and regulation bylaw will no longer meet the needs of the solid waste collection service. And this report seeks council direction to repeal that bylaw. And finally, a solid waste contamination policy to define escalating enforcement steps for recycling contamination is recommended for approval. So the current solid waste bylaw was originally written over 20 years ago and pertains to the manual collection service that will be in place until the end of December this year. Recent amendments to the previous bylaw were all in preparation for the impending transition to automated collection in 2024, and this included redefining accepted materials, removing multifamily and industrial, commercial, institutional properties, including commingled organics, which is the yard waste and the kitchen waste, and limiting organic collection to 360 liters, as well as the option to purchase yard waste tags. And you can see a chart there just of garbage tags and yard waste tags sales throughout the year. And it's been generally declining throughout the year. We didn't have October numbers when I prepared this presentation, but I saw them today and they're still on the decline. So in January 2024, the transition to automated collection will change garbage collection from weekly to bi-weekly, alternating with recycling and with weekly organics collection. The change to bi-weekly garbage is to align with the established goals for household garbage reduction as defined in the Regional Solid Waste Management Plan. Organics will see a limit based on cart size, as additional yard waste stickers won't be available. However, additional carts can be made available for purchase. Automated collection will introduce automated carts to each dwelling unit in the curbside collection service. So there's 2 standard cart sets in that table. Single family or single residential homes and duplexes will be receiving the larger set, which is a 360 liter recycling, a 360 liter organics, and a 120 liter garbage cart. Secondary suites, carriage houses, residential detached townhomes, patio homes, manufactured homes in a mobile home park, and fourplexes will be receiving the smaller carts, which are the 240 liter recycling, 120 liter organics, and 120 liter garbage. With respect to cart exchanges, a cart selection survey was unfortunately not available prior to the cart order due to supply chain shortages and a long lead time for the carter. So this process started in the 2021 kind of era. So Courtenay used historical data and past experience to select the standard cart sets for different housing types in the city. And the standard cart sets are based on industry best practices, regional waste reduction commitments, and contractual obligations with Recycle BC. So residents have been asked to use the carts for all 4 seasons with an online cart exchange portal starting in the fall of 2024. Organic cart exchanges are primarily expected as garbage carts are only available in one size. Recycling is limited to the 240 liter and the 306 liter sizes. The first cart exchange will be free for each owner and limited to once annually, with future annual cart exchanges priced at $65, which is the cost recovery. Recent experiences in the regional district of Nanaimo, who rolled out automated in 2020, 81% of residents took the default garbage cart, with 11% upsizing to the 240 liter. 86% took the default recycling cart, which was a 240 liter, and only one size of organics was available with a different historical yard waste collection system. So additional carts will be made available. With respect to garbage, homes producing home healthcare waste will be able to get additional cart for $56 annually. Other garbage carts, so if you want another garbage cart and you're not producing home healthcare waste, it's $136, which is the garbage portion of the basic annual fee. With respect to recycling, we're encouraging unlimited recycling, so additional recycling carts are available for $14 annually. And organics, additional organics carts are either $150 or $184 for the small cart or the large cart. Kind of unique to Courtenay, we'll be offering wildlife resistance organics carts pictured there on the slide, and they'll be provided to homes by default near watercourses, wildlife corridors, and green belts, as identified on the map. Wildlife resistant carts have a robust lid and a gravity lock system. So the lid stays locked until it's tipped upside down and emptied into the truck, or when a resident squeezes the latch and they can open the lock that way, obviously. Should a household outside of the wildlife resistant cart area request one of these carts, it'll be provided based on availability. Due to the automated nature of the carts, the cart weight limits will increase. And also, we'll have mandatory participation in this system. So there's no way to opt out. All properties that are currently serviced by curbside collection will be required to participate in the new service. We'll also be defining unserviceable properties, and these are properties that are deemed unserviceable for operational or safety reasons, the presence of an unsafe person or animal, or non-payment of fees. The unserviceable property will be required to make alternative arrangements to ensure all waste is disposed of an approved disposal site. But as the bylaw is written, unserviceable properties can in the future be included in the service based on defined terms and conditions. With respect to cart placement, the bylaw is written to identify as many scenarios as possible to define guidelines for cart placement, including alleyway placement, cul-de-sacs, bicycle lanes, and even during snow events. For the most part, cart placement will be in the same location as solid waste is collected now, but some areas will have to change based on limitations of the assisted side loading arm on the truck. So once cart deliveries are complete, the contractor will be confirming preferred placement with residents that have inquired. The assisted set-out service, at the time of writing, and still, 20 households have asked for the assisted service, which requires that the resident is physically challenged and does not have an able-bodied person assisting them with household duties. So the service includes the driver of the truck on collection day, pulling the carts or the cart or carts from the agreed upon location on the property, pulling them down towards the truck, emptying them into the truck, and then returning them to the same location on the property. So the resident and the city will enter into an agreement regarding the collection point, as well as a waiver of responsibility for damages. So a site inspection and a conversation with the resident may occur, and the proposed fee for this service is $100 annually. We'll also have the option to perform waste audits and have the right of entry. So the city or contractor will be able to enter the property to perform waste audits, to review materials in the cart, and to review contamination and educate about diversion to other solid waste streams. In addition, based on requests for additional carts, the contractor or the city will be able to enter the property to determine the number of dwelling units. And then moving on to contamination management. Contamination can mean a number of things, and obviously it includes prohibited waste in the trash or in the garbage carts, but it can also mean garbage in the organics cart or the recycling cart, recyclables in the organics cart or the garbage cart, or organic waste in the garbage cart or the recycling cart. In the framework of curbside collection, it mainly refers to depot recyclables, so like glass, foam, and flexible plastic in the recycling cart, which creates a problem for the city and Recycle BC when it gets recycled at the material sorting facility. An increased level of recycling contamination can impact the city financially. We do receive a disbursement from Recycle BC, and they can penalize us if the contamination levels get too high, excuse me. When municipalities change to a cart system, recycling contamination typically increases as the manual loader is removed from the situation, and contamination is only caught after the solid waste enters the truck. So the city has chosen to develop a solid waste management or solid waste contamination policy, which can be enforced with discretion and modified by staff as the system evolves and lessons are learned over the next year or so. Enforcement for contamination in the recycling cart will follow a series of steps for each contamination, and is every time contamination is encountered, and it starts with an OOP sticker, and it can end in a fine or for non-compliance and a suspension and collection. But should a residence or a property see no contamination for a defined period of time, they can de-escalate through the series of steps to get away from the infractions. The goal will be for education rather than enforcement, with the commencement of automated collection also including an ambassador program like we see in the summer, starting in January, however, at the same time to monitor and track contamination. So automated collection will bring new fees for the curbside collection service, and it's driven by the cost to provide the service from the contractor, the contractual obligations, the tipping fees at the landfill, and the administration to run the service. The fees and charges as represented here are considered as proposed in anticipation of the 2024 solid waste budget presentation and until the 2024 fees and charges bylaw amendment is adopted by council. Big question, what's the basic annual fee? So for single residential dwellings and duplexes, we're looking at approximately $351 annually. The basic annual fee for multi-residential detached manufactured homes in a mobile home park, fourplex and the secondary suites is approximately $318 annually. And as mentioned, an additional cart for home healthcare waste is proposed to cost $56, with an additional cart for residents with no home healthcare waste, so they just want an extra cart for garbage. We're looking at $136, which is the garbage portion of the basic annual fee. Additional recycling carts will be priced at $14 to promote unlimited recycling, and additional organics carts are in the range of $150 for the 120 liter cart or $184 annually for the large 360. And that represents the organics collection fee and the basic annual fee. So that brings us to the recommendations today. The council gives first, second, and third readings to the solid waste management bylaw number 3113, 2023. Recommendation 2 is that council directs staff to update the municipal ticketing information bylaw number 2435, 2006 to include a section for infractions related to the solid waste management bylaw. number 3113, 2023. And the council directs staff to draft a bylaw to repeal the refuse materials collection, removal and regulation bylaw number 2244, 2002, and update the municipal ticketing information bylaw number 2435, 2006 to remove the section related to infractions related to the refuse materials collection, removal and regulation bylaw number 2244, 2002. And recommendation 3 is that council adopt the solid waste contamination policy. That brings me to the end of my presentation.
Excellent. So you're ready for questions?
Absolutely, Mayor.
Okay, fantastic. Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and thanks for the presentation. I had a question. I didn't see anywhere the weight limits. Did you mention those? Are those in there? Like, how much can your garbage can weigh?
Yeah, through the mayor to Councillor Frisch. It's increasing significantly. It is in the bylaw. I'd have to look it up, but it's for a 120 liter cart, it's 55 kilograms or 122 pounds. For the 240 liter cart, it's 102 kilograms, 227 pounds, and for the big 360, it's 146 kilograms or 322 pounds. That's because there's no manual person loading it anymore. So,
sure. Well, that sounds like lots. I can't imagine a recycling container weighing 200 pounds. But anyways, the other question I had was about the timing and of when you could put your garbage can out. And maybe I'm the only one who doesn't want to go outside in the morning to do it. Does it make sense to not allow people to put their garbage cans out at night? The day before?
Through the mayor to Council Frisch. The goal is to reduce wildlife interactions with that. Hopefully people are putting most of their kitchen waste in the organics cart, but with organics going every week, it's assumed you may be putting that out the night before as well. So we want to kind of discourage that overnight option. Should raccoons or bears or other animals be attracted?
Yeah, I guess the question is, do we have that problem currently? Because I look outside and the night before, and it seems quite common for people to do that.
Anecdotally, I can't really tell you. There are people that I've spoken to this summer who are adamant that they needed a lockable cart for areas that I didn't even realize might have bears. So they absolutely wanted that, and that's just for storage on their property. So I think it's a possibility, and we definitely don't want to see the harmful things that can happen to animals should they get habituated to garbage and organics.
Okay, well, thanks for the response.
Thanks, Councillor Frisch. And I have Councillor Moore, and I do see Councillor Delacour has his hand up, as well as Councillor McCollum, but I'll pass it over to Councillor Moore.
Thanks, Mayor. That's interesting that Councillor Frisch made that comment, because one of my comments was around expanding that zone, because we're actually seeing bears like in town, in the downtown core sometimes. And where I was living near Piercy Creek, which is outside of that zone, it's frequent to see bears, even cougars in that area. So, and definitely raccoons. Anywhere along those creeks, there's always bears and raccoons for sure. So you were saying that those wildlife carts can be requested and then they would have to pay, I'm assuming, or would they be provided free? Because I do think that is a bit of a conservative wildlife zone from my experience living in Courtenay for many, many years. And I certainly see in that area in particular that bears or whatever have been into the garbage. Yeah, people cleaning up in the morning or whatever.
Yeah, through the mayor to Councillor Moore. Should anybody request a wildlife resistant organics cart, it'll be provided not free, I guess free of charge or no extra upcharge. It'll be at the same cost of the basic annual fee. The cost of those carts is spread across the service. the cost of the carts is substantially more due to the robustness of them and the locking mechanism. So we were hesitant to offer it across the community. But should anyone request one, based on availability, they'll be provided.
That's great. And then just to, and then if I may, Mayor, just a couple other.
Yep.
Then there's the piece around the households that have asked for assisted service. Are we providing assisted service now? And I guess if we are, is that in line with the number of households that we have? Utilizing that?
Through the mayor to Council Moran, Mterra currently provides assisted set-out service to 4 houses in Courtenay.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so we've got an increase from 4 to 20 at this point. I guess I'm kind of nerdy this way, but I do watch other council meetings, and I was watching Comox's the other day. And they were talking about the containers, and what I heard from listening to their staff was that these new containers, although they seem very imposing and big, that they're actually ergonomically designed to actually not be any more difficult than the previous carts, and that what was said is that if you didn't need assistance before with your cart, you shouldn't need assistance now. I'm wondering if you're able to speak to that piece of things.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, just checking the numbers earlier today, about 99% of the carts have been delivered. So most people have gotten them. We've received, like I mentioned, 20 calls for assisted set out. On the other hand, we've gotten, in the range of about 90 requests for cart exchanges, which we're hoping to hold off until next year. But we will accommodate people if they don't want the assisted set out service, they just want a smaller cart. It has to be kind of evaluated in terms of need, because we don't want to be doing exchanges all the time. But yeah, the carts are designed absolutely to be ergonomic. The weight centered appropriately. I don't think everyone's going to be loading them up at 300 pounds of materials on a regular basis, but they could. They're quite easy to wheel on a flat paved surface, even on a gravel surface. It's not that bad.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Moran and Councillor McCollum.
Yeah, thanks. 2 questions. Is there any financial incentive to homeowners downsizing their carts? Like, would we be adjusting the fee if they were going from, say, like the full size organics down to the townhouse sized, or would the fees are the fees basically set by housing type?
Thanks for the question. Through the mayor to Councillor McCollum. The fees will be charged hopefully based on 2 different cart sets. But if you do request a downsize and and we can accommodate you, you'll be paying for the volume that you're producing. So that variable rate. So you would see potentially a $30 reduction in fees if you were to go to the smaller cart set.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's good to know. The other question I had was just around homes that may have secondary suites in them, but are potentially not used that way. Some people acquire a home that has a basement suite, and then their housing situation is that they use it as a single family home. And, where our records are only so up to date with what's happening in individual homes. And I'm just wondering if a residence is delivered 2 sets of carts based on what we know to exist on that lot, they want to send back the double carts, do we also adjust the billing for that particular property?
Yes, that's the case. The process has been enlightening this year in terms of understanding the fees and charges that are going out to people. So if we identified that a house was paying for 2 two sets of carts for that secondary suite. Some were delivered that second set and immediately phoned us and asked them to pick them up because they didn't realize they'd been identified that way. So we are in the process right now of picking up extra carts in that case. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks for those answers.
Thanks, Councillor McCollum and Councillor Jolicoeur.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and thanks to staff and the report. I'm really happy to see some of the considerations that have been brought into the staff report and in the schedule of fees. I have kind of a policy question and then some specific questions around the fees. On this page 3, I'll start with the policy question. Page 3 of the staff report, under additional carts, the second paragraph speaks to a cost of $136 for an additional garbage container. And so although a lot of this work happened prior to me being on council, my understanding is a big part of this, and it's kind of alluded to in the staff report, is diversion of waste. And so I'm wanting to make sure I understand this. Is this paragraph and the fee associated with this really indicating that if there are families or homes that wish to have an additional garbage container, that they can in fact purchase one and then fill out and put out 2 garbage containers when it is the garbage day?
Yeah, through the mayor to Councillor Jolicoeur, that is correct. They can get a second cart for full price. We've got a few, like anecdotally, I've had a few phone calls about residents that have, you've got six people or multi-generational families living in the home, and it will be a challenge to make it all work with a 120-liter cart on a biweekly basis. So the option of purchasing an additional cart is there.
And as a follow-up to that, the diversion of waste as being one of the primary drivers for this project and this work that we're doing and the transfer over to this new system, is it up to staff discretion to approve an additional cart? How, the example that you said, I think makes perfect logical sense. Multi-generational household, maybe 6 adults, 2 babies, lots of diapers. And I'm sure there's lots of other examples. I do wonder, is there other municipalities that have policies around this, around supporting staff to be discretionary around approving an additional waste container?
The bylaw borrows from a couple of municipalities that have adopted automated collection in the last few years, the RDN in Nanaimo and Abbotsford. The case you made there with families, multi-generational families with babies and diapers, that is what we are considering home healthcare waste, diapers of any kind. So they would qualify for the home healthcare waste option. On the other hand, it is sort of to staff's discretion whether or not someone's asking for a cart, and they may not have any reason for like home healthcare waste, and they would be charged at full charge. But anecdotally, I've had a lot of calls from concerned young moms or elderly people, and it's quite clear that they are making their case for that home healthcare waste cart. Not a lot of calls with additional carts for the just garbage because they're heavy garbage producers.
Right, and the costs associated to the disposal fees of additional waste per household that has an additional garbage can will just be distributed amongst the larger ratepayers for this service?
That's correct. Through the mayor to Councillor Jolicoeur, that subsidized fee of $56, it's a small number of households, and it would be spread across the service. The cost would be.
Okay, thanks. Moving on to the mayor, if that's okay, I have another question on the subsidized service. So as someone who...
Councillor Jolicoeur, if you could just hold 1 second. Mr. Shaw just wants to interject.
Okay.
If I may, thank you through the mayor to Councillor Joe LaCour, just to extend on Mr. Thompson's question there about policy, or his answer with respect to policy and additional garbage collection at his residential household. The bylaw does provide the provision for the opportunity for staff to engage with that resident upon that request or application. And so that provides the opportunity for staff to meet with the individuals on site and do a waste audit to help them understand where their waste may be otherwise generated or diverted to appease the need and then satisfy the diversion requirements that the city is so hoping to seek through either organics, recycling, and then garbage. So last case resort would be the additional garbage bin, but we'd hope to achieve compliance through evaluation, education, and understanding.
That's an amazing answer. Thank you for that. It sounds like there's a process in place to support our residents to understand. Yeah, moving on to the accessibility, the supported. I've lost
assistance service. Assistance service.
Yes, $100. Have we engaged with the disability community, the accessibility committee regionally? I'm thinking, you know, a lot of folks who do, as someone who has a partner who uses this service in another community, you know, it is something that I know a lot of people who do require this service are on fixed incomes. These are folks who are either in their elder years or who perhaps are on PWD. And I'm wondering if staff can speak to how they landed on $100. Is it? It seems it's $100 annually. Have you seen in your comparative analysis with other communities, is there a granting program that people based on a certain income can apply for subsidies for this? I'm wondering if staff can speak to that specific fee.
Thanks through the mayor to Councillor Joe LaCour. The contracted cost of assisted set out service is actually $450. So this is there is a $350 subsidy for this, which is spread across the service again. The conversations I've had with a lot of residents who are elderly are that these are a lot of, you know, proud people living independently in their homes, and they do want to, you know, get help with the cards, but they don't necessarily want. They understand that you know, there is a fee for this service and it's something that the city is providing. When I've asked them about the fee, they really haven't had any apprehensions of it or to it at all. To my knowledge, looking at the other services provided in the other communities that we source the bylaw from, there weren't any granting opportunities, but you know, there could be opportunities going on now at this point. I'm not quite sure.
And Mr. Shaw has a comment as well.
Yeah, thank you. Through the mayor to Councillor Joe LaCour, just to add to Mr. Thompson's comments there. We've currently anticipated and built into the budget process, you know, an increase in need for individuals for assisted set out. As Chris articulated, Mr. Thompson articulated, there's about 20 that are currently seeking those opportunities. We're currently working with 4 individuals. We've budgeted and anticipated for up to 50 or just try, you know, just about greater than 50 with the anticipation of the subsidy being, you know, upwards of $350 throughout the service and spread across the service. There's definitely an opportunity to understand what the impacts look like on the long term of that. In anticipation of this budget coming forward and this service, we're unclear as to what the actual need may be once the service is in full provision. So this provides us an opportunity to review those needs, understand the cost implications and what that might look like across the board as we continue the service in perpetuity. This first year provides us with great numbers to understand where we may be relative to those needs. There's definitely an opportunity to amend it as years go on and as the service becomes established. But as we just get out of the gate, it's a good opportunity for us to know where we could land and what we can expect in the future.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thanks. I did have one more question, Mayor. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. The last piece here, you know, if I put my equity policy lens on, which I know many of the staff and some of council colleagues attended, in the infraction table 2 on page 7, it speaks to removal of garbage, recyclables, and organics, $200 infraction fine. I'm wondering if staff have taken into consideration how this might impact folks who might be going through recycling containers. It happens in every community. It's already happening in our communities now to pick up bottles and returnables as a means to gain some income. I do just wonder if this is one of those potential unintended consequences of giving someone a ticket who may, for example, be unhoused and this is their only way of gaining some income. I'm wondering if staff can speak to that.
Thank you for the question through the mayor to Councillor Jolicoeur. That is a good point. The city does have discretion on enforcing these bylaws. In particular, this arose from an incidence of actually the opposite occurring of neighbors putting contaminated waste into receptacles without the other neighbors knowing about it. So that was it's more about preventing unrestricted scavenging from garbage or recycling containers. That being said, obviously this does occur in every community, like you mentioned. So we would have to work with the bylaw department. And also, this would probably be one of those learning opportunities in the first 12 months of this program as we go forward.
Right. Thanks, Councillor Jolicoeur, and Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks again, Mayor. I just wanted to pick up on the cost of an extra garbage can, the non-subsidized one. For the subsidized one, that seems to make a ton of sense. But when I saw the cost, was it 156 about or 136? It seemed really low. And as was mentioned, we are trying to encourage people to minimize their waste. I love the idea that we have the ability to talk with people if they can't figure out how to minimize their waste. But I also think if people aren't willing to, that cost is actually a bit low for a whole year of extra garbage pickup. I don't know if staff contemplated maybe making it a bit higher as a disincentive to grab a second one. Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Sure. Through the mayor to Councillor Frisch. That is a good question. Some municipalities more than likely do charge sort of a disincentive rate. This came about from those large households that may not have elderly family members or babies in diapers, but just had due to the cost of housing, just a number of people living in the home and just having a hard time fitting all their garbage into one cart for a 2-week period. The one conversation I do remember having with a resident who said they host a lot of parties and they have a lot of garbage. Obviously, we would want to go down the waste auditing route, and when the cost of on the $136 on top of the basic annual fee came up in the conversation, they did sort of shy away from that, looking at that extra cart pretty much immediately.
Okay. Well, in my mind, it should be higher, but I guess we can always change it going forward if it's taken advantage of in a way that we don't like seeing. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Frisch. And Mr. Shaw.
Thank you for that. Through the mayor to Councillor Frisch, just to add to that, a great point, great comment. And I think as we, continue through the first year of this, there's a lot of metrics that are going to be collected. As Mr. Thompson alluded to, it's been quite enlightful as we've gone through this process and understanding where the needs are within our community and understanding what this full automation or this transition product will look like in the long term. As we've articulated through this presentation, the extra tag collections, we've got some pretty good data on those, and we'll continue to collect information as we go through this first year process, and next year's report back out in terms of where we've landed, what we've learned, and what we're recommending for change will be quite a good conversation.
Has that generated a subsequent or?
Because you probably want to move. Yeah, well, what I'm thinking is, and I just wanted to say it, that, the waste containers are very small for a 2-week period. And I'm not complaining. I'm just saying it's probably going to change how people deal with their garbage and how people look at the products they buy. And actually, I think that's a really good thing, because now when you go shopping, you have to think, well, what am I going to do with all those pieces of plastic that I can't recycle, which is really the majority. It's amazing how much stuff is recyclable if you take the time to separate it out. So I think it's a really positive thing that we're limiting the amount of garbage and picking it up bi-weekly. Thanks.
Right. And Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move recommendation 1 that council give first, second, and third readings to solid waste management bylaw number 3113/2023.
It's been moved and seconded. We've had about a 40-minute conversation around this, so I think we're pretty good. Any further questions? Oh, Councillor McCollum? Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous.
And Mayor, I'll move that council direct staff to update the municipal ticket information bylaw number 2435/2006 to include a section for infractions related to solid waste management bylaw number 3113/2023. And that council direct staff to draft a bylaw to repeal the refuse materials collection, removal, and regulation bylaw number 2244/2002 and update the municipal ticket information bylaw number 2435/2006 to remove the section related to infractions related to the refuse materials collection, removal, and regulation bylaw number 2244/2002.
All right. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's unanimous again.
And I'll move that council adopt the solid waste contamination policy.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Again, no further questions or comments. All those in favor? That passes. And just again, want to thank staff for really a great report and awesome answers, good tag teaming in there. And I saw some backup staff ready to go as well. So really good to see all the work around this. It's a big change. So glad that we're really putting our heads around it. With that, Councillor Frisch.
Move that council give first, second, and third reading to development cost charges amendment bylaw number 3116.
Excellent. And are there any questions or comments, or does staff want to speak to it all? Mr. Garbutt?
Thanks. I just want to highlight this is really great work that's happened in our Development Services Department. It's essential to keep our DCC charges where we're at. Fortunately, because we clarified the duplex charge last year, we can do a CPI adjustment. As the staff report outlines, we are working on development cost charges. The development community wants us to be working on development cost charges, and then we also have this impending legislation, so it's very, very important. Ms. Wade's here for questions, but we have a comprehensive staff report in front of council.
Excellent. Thanks so much. And I don't see any. Councillor Gilles.
Thanks, Mayor. I also can't see you guys. I can just see the podium, but my council colleagues will know where my comments are coming from, and I think I mentioned it to a few of our staff. And really, this is one of those examples where, from a high-level policy perspective, I do get curious. Again, the ratio of the spread. If we're looking at page 3, with all the different land uses, specifically, the institutional land use and the industrial land use kind of come out to me. Relative to the single family, multifamily, and commercial. I guess a question to staff, relative to whether it's a comparative analysis or, do we see municipalities having a comprehensive conversation around ways in which things like DCCs, or in other cases, taxes, are distributed across different classes or different land uses in this case, relative to the overall picture of a community?
Ms. Wade?
Through the mayor to Councillor Jolker. Development cost charges are regulated by the province, and there's formulas that I don't have memorized right now in regards to how you calculate the various types of land uses in relation to the development cost charge project. And so it's quite a convoluted process on how these are determined. And we have to follow those regulations. So it's not like we have choices or options. There's actually a whole framework that is laid out on how you calculate development cost charges. So that's my answer. If you wanted more update, you will get that as we go through the DCC update. Today is just a CPI index that we can get through our amendment. But it'll be more fulsome when it comes to the actual DCC update.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Jolicoeur. And again, it's happy to see this coming through. So we don't have these huge jumps and getting behind constantly from basically the moment that it comes out, or at least within a year or so. Councillor Okie doke. Great to hear that. We have a motion on the floor. All those in favor? And that is unanimous. And we'll go into third reading on zoning amendment bylaw 2973.
Mayor, I
Yes.
have a conflict of interest in this number one, Dawn to Dawn, as I'm an advisor to the Dawn to Dawn board. So I'll be removing myself from this item. Thanks.
Just.
Can someone text me when you're done?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, we've got it looked after. All right, Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation. It's got 7 separate clauses that are laid out on the screen. So, but essentially it's a cancelling of third reading to zoning amendment bylaw number 2973. And that prior to adoption of the bylaw, these 7 conditions be met.
Okay. Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Or does staff want to talk this way?
Through the mayor to council. Yes, I'll just give a quick high level update. Since you last received an update in July, we've been working with the applicant on the outstanding requirements for adoption in regards to the master plans and some of the Dawn to Dawn contribution. And also what we've done is highlight in this report the phases of development. And what it does in this report is it actually talks about the terms of the development agreement. So each of the phases is outlined in here with what the expectations are in the development agreement. And the development, each phase is you will do those things before you go on to the next phase. It reflects the reports to date, sort of talking about the community amenity contributions, the greenways, the protection of the trees, location of stormwater management pond, etc. And then the DA will now be drafted if this moves forward. And what happens is the DA will come back, the development agreement. I'm trying not to speak in acronyms. And we'll bring that forward with everything you see in the paper, in your report. And then council will see the full development agreement with all the terms that you see in this report.
Excellent.
And I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Thanks very much, Ms. Wade. And Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I just want to acknowledge that the conditions that have been laid out really reflect what was heard at the public hearing. And I appreciate that that was some time ago and that a fair amount of work has gone down or has taken place to get us to this point today. And while there may have been some concerns about how this parcel of land originally came into the city and, you know, the logging that took place on it and such, I think that, you know, the time has moved on. And I actually had the opportunity to walk through the property some time ago with my dog. I was probably trespassing. My apologies if that was the case. You know, I think that there's an opportunity for a fairly unique community to be built there, and hopefully it will coincide with the Anderton node where some services can also be provided, and you know, we'll see people able to walk to shops and pubs and things like that. It seems like it's been a long time coming, but I appreciate the work that the proponent and our staff have done to sort out the concerns that were raised at the public hearing. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian. And Councillor McCollum.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I just had a question around the first bullet in the list of recommendations there with the Dawn to Dawn modular home. Quite a lot of time has passed since this was proposed, as we all know, which I'm not sure if this particular item still makes sense. I know there has been some major changes at Dawn to Dawn since we received this initial proposal. I don't know if they have other modular homes, and I just wonder if staff can speak to where that something like that would be cited if the city would then secure it. It just seems unusual and maybe more complicated than initially thought when this was first provided with the proposal.
Ms. Wade.
Through the mayor to Councillor McCollum. Yes, good point to clarify. So in that first phase, the history on it, it was originally a modular home and time has gone on. But we can look at it taking security or cash for the value of that modular home. And then that can be given to Dawn to Dawn.
So probably realistically, it will end up as a cash contribution or cash donation to that particular nonprofit.
That would be correct.
Thanks.
Excellent. And maybe just for clarification, is that something that Dawn to Dawn would have any, because it's in there either or, would it just be up to the developer, or would Dawn to Dawn, have they had any updated conversations, again, given just the time that's taken to get to here?
To the mayor, in regards to that question, the idea with this was a contribution to provide housing. And so the housing could be built, or it could be a security. And ideally, it could be a discussion moving forward, either or, but I think staff is feeling that the cash contribution would probably be better given the aspects around the modular home. So that's kind of where we're leaning.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. And I'm not really pushing things in a particular direction. I think really, again, just happy to see this coming forward and looking forward to it. Mr. Carbett.
Thanks. I don't want to prolong the discussion, but council's aware of recent initiatives by Dawn to Dawn, Rainbow House, and my apologies, I wouldn't even attempt to accurately pronounce that. They have desires and program in place around Dawn to Dawn, and I think they would be the best ones through consultation in finalizing that. What would be most assistance there at the time? Correct. That was some initiatives related to modular units that they were doing. So really acknowledge that working with Dawn to Dawn will help clarify that, and that would be done prior to council's consideration of the development agreement and adoption of the zoning.
Thanks, Mr. Carbett. And Councillor McCollum.
Yeah, I also had a different question around how the terms of the development agreement will work. This is a pretty complex change, and it looks, like it's a phased approach, and when we see that, we don't really have a clear sense of how long it will take for the development to progress from the beginning to the end. And in the staff report under the terms of the development agreement, it says as part of final subdivision approval, the applicant will submit the volunteered community amenity contributions as per the mutually agreed to schedule attached to this agreement. So we'll see the schedule attached to the agreement. And are those contributions going to be phased as well? I guess the concern that I'm flagging is that we're already tied to what made sense a number of years ago. And then if we're phasing it out over, a 10-year period, that those funds are just able to do so much less than when we were first contemplating this. So just wondering if you could clarify that.
Ms. Wade.
Through the mayor to Councilor McCollum. Yes, those are things that we can talk about with the developer and setting out the schedule because they're negotiated. And we acknowledge the concern about time has gone by and the value that was identified in the reports to date, which was the 250 and 250, so roughly 500,000. And historically, the city has done different ways of when the community, the community amenity contributions have been collected. So we can discuss that with the applicant and work out that schedule.
Great, thanks for that clarification.
Excellent. All right. Well, seeing no further questions or comments, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that passes unanimously. If somebody would like to, oh, you were going to text Councillor Jolicoeur and Councillor Frisch.
We ready to go?
Well, maybe just we unsquish it so we can see Councillor Jolicoeur back. Welcome back. All right, if it sounds like you can hear us, so we'll pass it back over to Councillor Frisch.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll move that council adopt building bylaw number 3114.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? That passes unanimously. Recommendation 2, Councillor Frisch.
Move that council adopt municipal ticket information amendment bylaw number 3115.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments regarding that? Seeing none, all those in favor? And any opposed? And that passes unanimously. And we'll get into council reports. Councillor Cole Hamilton sends his regrets. He is representing us at FCM right now at their meetings. Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, I do have a report attached, but I'll just share with everyone that I'm suffering through Movember with an itchy upper lip in support of men's health and mental health in general. So if anyone wants to support me, they can probably find me on social media. Thanks.
Thanks very much. Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll just note that I had the opportunity to stand in for you and the acting mayor on Monday when we raised the transgender flag at City Hall on that day of remembrance. We had about 40 people out, and I think we're genuinely appreciative of the opportunity to be there and to take part in the city's support of that day. And thanks for the opportunity to be the lead person for the city in that regard.
Thank you so much. And yeah, with Councillor Jolicoeur and I really appreciate you stepping in to represent the city. Councillor Jolicoeur.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks, Councillor Hillian, for that as well. Yeah, over the last little bit, just I'm sure others will speak to it, but Moonlight Magic was on Friday night. It was a lot of fun. It's probably my favorite time of the year to see so many families out, and we got to see the Arts Council's new art exhibit in their trailer, which was really exciting, an interactive art experience, and a few new food trucks in the community. And I also just wanted to add to Councillor Frisch. It was International Men's Day over the weekend, and so I got to attend a meeting online just to remember all the men who we've lost to suicide over the last year in BC. And so just wanting to acknowledge that, and that I look forward to seeing some positive results from Movember this year going towards men's health. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Councillor Jolicoeur and Councillor McCollum.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll do a little report on the Rec Commission meeting yesterday that I chaired. There was a couple of items that are pretty specific and impactful to the city of Courtenay. One was that funding was approved for a grant for city staff to initiate a regional approach to field bookings and charges. So I think that's really important work to see move forward in terms of equitable use of our fields and better service to various sports groups around the community. And then the even bigger item that had a very lengthy discussion and a lot of considerations to weigh was the advancement of the artificial turf field. It did proceed, although there was some opposition expressed to it, mainly around the cost. Investing in these infrastructure projects, of course, do land on taxpayers to provide the funding for. So the design that was advanced was one that's estimated at a cost of $5.7 million, and it is meant to accommodate baseball, soccer, and practice space for rugby and football as well. And there was also funding in that proposal to put in facility for a cricket pitch in the fields beside where the artificial turf is going in. So this is not the last we've heard of it, because part of that advancement is a request from the regional district to have the minimum tax requisition increased at the city of Courtenay as well as the other participants. So that will be the next hurdle in seeing the project move ahead.
All right, thanks. I would assume the city is probably on the hook for 40% of like through the service, most likely. And we did talk about this, and we'll see if we can get maybe some of the service clubs to come in and help out with some of those extra facilities in the project to keep those costs as low as possible. So thanks very much, Councillor Moore. Excuse me. Thanks very much. And I'll just jump into a few things. So obviously the housing conference in Vancouver this week has been fairly on my mind. A couple other really key events. We did have the Community Champions Gala that raised, I think, over $30,000 for the Healing Hearts and Dawn to Dawn, as well as Sunday Station. It's the first time that fundraiser has happened. Remembrance Day on November 11th, obviously a big day, and it was again great to see so many people out to remember and to pay tribute. There was also the Métis Week flag raising for Louis Riel. Again, great to see many people out to support that. Moonlight and Magic, again, the biggest one in recent history, at least, but probably ever. And great to see, again, thousands of people around town, and more importantly, packing all the stores downtown, I think was great to see. Lastly, I would my conversation with the Minister of Finance last night, where I was able to utilize that time to talk about various taxes as well as speculation and vacancy tax. And with that, we are adjourned. Oh, Councillor Hillian.
Just a short add-on, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to acknowledge that on the weekend I attended the memorial service for Stuart Hardy. Stuart was a longtime councillor, a band councillor with Comox First Nation, a fisherman, a logger, renowned as a knowledge keeper, and of course the father of Regional District Director Richard Hardy. And I was pleased to be able to be there and take part in that large gathering on Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councillor Hillian. Yeah. I really appreciate that. And with that, we are adjourned.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Evan.
Bye.